Is it okay? It's recording, right?
Yep.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, so sorry I could hear you, but I was away from my screen, so I couldn't
Oh, no
respond to
worries,
you
no
because I
rush.
was muted.
Sorry.
That's okay.
When you get a chance, we put there's a Padlet activity that we'd like everyone to do as they come in.
Great.
There's also a link to our handout too.
I
And
have that. Thank you.
yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for coming.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and if you have Adobe as well, feel free and pull that up. But no worries if you don't.
Hi, Becky. Good to see you again. I think you came to my last one. Um, Thanks for joining us. When you get a chance, we put the link to the handout in the chat box. And then there's also a Padlet activity that we thought we'd start out with this evening. And then are you gonna have access to Adobe? Okay, cool. Hi, Joni. How's it going?
It's going all right. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes.
Um, in the chat, we put a link to the handout that we'll use tonight, and then also the Padlet activity that we'll start off with as well. And then will you have access to sorry, Illustrator?
No, I will not.
Okay, good to know. We have an alternate activity for you. And then I think we're waiting just on one more person, so we'll give her just like one more minute and then we can get started.
Did anyone have trouble with the Padlet, or was that pretty clear for everybody? You can just give a thumbs up if that works for you.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
we've already got some good responses in here.
Awesome.
Hi, Kelsey.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm gonna put in the chat box for you a link to the handout and then also the Padlet activity that we'll start with. Maybe just want to take a minute to get everything open. And then will you have access to Adobe tonight?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think we have one more person joining, but we'll get started in about 1 minute. I already see some awesome responses. I guess I'll switch over to the Padlet. Oh yeah, awesome. So we actually will talk about Coca-Cola later tonight. So that's a great one. REI, that's a really great one too. I actually don't know what Rafa is. I don't think I've heard of them before. But that's a really cool logo. Okay, well, do you guys want to get started, Stephanie and Kim? Okay. All right. So thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. You guys have some already great ideas of some memorable logos. Well, welcome tonight. So our webinar is called Graphics for Branding, Building a Cohesive Visual Identity Using Adobe Illustrator. But don't panic if you don't have Adobe Illustrator, because we also do have alternate software that you can use or platforms that we can use as well to create your own brand for your organization or for yourself. To get started, my name's Kirsten Olson. I'm in my final semester of the CU Learning Design Technology program. I'm a second grade teacher in Aurora Public Schools, so I do consider myself somewhat of a novice on this, but I've really enjoyed getting to know this platform a lot better as time has gone on. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm a student in the LDT program, but I've actually had the opportunity to use Adobe Illustrator a lot lately on a project that I'm working on for the Behavioral Health Administration. So it's a really fantastic project or a program that you can use for a lot of different applications. So I'm excited to jump in.
And then, hi everybody, I'm Kim, and I'm a middle school social studies teacher and currently enrolled in the program. So I am a novice to Adobe, but learning more and more about all the tools and how to utilize them to enhance e-learning. So I'm excited to show you some other tools and keep learning about Adobe.
All right, so tonight there will be a handout that we will frequently use. This handout is very detailed. We spent a ton of time. We've been very thoughtful in what we think will be the most helpful for you. We have basically it all broken down into the parts of our webinar tonight. And then if you notice too, there's also notes that you can add in for yourself. Feel free to add like for the whole group if there's something that you're gleaming, but if you don't want to have everyone else's notes, you can also, of course, make your own copy and keep your own notes. But we have screenshots of the directions that could be helpful for you tonight or just helpful in the future as you develop your own brand or develop or whatever you plan on using Adobe Illustrator for in the future. Obviously, Adobe is not just for branding, it can be for really anything. It's awesome because you can really tailor it to what you need. But again, our focus tonight will really just be on branding. I will put that link in the chat box just one more time to make sure everybody has it. Thumbs up if you guys have it. That way we know we're good to go, because that'll be definitely vital as we go throughout our learning tonight. So our objectives for tonight will be making appropriate decisions regarding when and how to use 2D vector graphics for branding using Adobe Creative Cloud, effectively using Adobe Illustrator to create a simple logo for yourself or your organization, or maybe a future organization, you don't know. And then also accessing resources to learn how to use Adobe After Effects. And that's kind of like a secondary objective. Ideally, we'd love to be able to have time to do that, but there's just so much to fit into 1 hour. But we also will hit on if you want to animate your logo, what that would look like. So we have our awesome KSK Designs logo that we designed. Actually, Stephanie can take credit. She did the initial design for it. She did an awesome job. But then obviously we're hoping to get some of your logos by the end of the night, or if you don't have a logo created, just some ideas of what maybe your logo will look like in the future. So let's just get started off by what is branding. So raise your hand if you've heard of the term branding before. Does anybody know? Okay. So brand really is, there's a big difference. Branding is just really creating your organization's or your personal message, and it's getting it across basically in simple font or wording or pictures. Really the biggest thing is that you want to separate branding from marketing. Marketing, you're trying to pitch something or sell something, but branding, you're really trying to say, this is who I am. This is who my organization is. This is what we value as an organization. This is who we are. It really should tell a visual story about who you are and what you want to accomplish as either a person or an organization. And really creating things to be standout and memorable, using colors, using different fonts, and we'll get into that in a little bit. One logo that we like to highlight was Coca-Cola, because first off, one of the big values that Coca-Cola has is that it is perfect for everybody. So it's, if you look at this brand right here, it's really simple. It's got, you know, two different hands portraying two different groups of people. And so it really just shows that everybody can be included together. But it's also just a really simple message that Coke can bring everybody together no matter who you are. Sorry. So there's a lot of different branding applications that you can do. Not every person's gonna have the same outcome for branding. So for example, like one thing I've seen lately for teachers and educators is that they'll make their own brand for themselves as an educator. Um, Maybe I know, like, especially in my last semester, we've been, you know, doing our capstone. So I had to create a logo for my capstone. But I think really the most important part is that you have your own goal in mind, whether it's setting a tone for a webinar, whether it's creating just a community within your organization, whether it's trying to connect with peers. I mean, really, it can be used for anything. So I think the most important part is that you have that goal in your mind and you know what you are trying to achieve with that goal. Yeah. So there are some fundamentals of logo designs. The biggest thing is you have to know your audience. So I think as you spend time in the learning design program, really understanding who you're trying to brand for, what they're looking for, and making sure that it's accessible for them. So picking a font that is attractive but also readable. If it's not readable, it could be hard for them to understand what is going on. And then also keeping sure that the scale works with whatever you're trying to post it, whether it's social media or not. So to get started, we are going to do a Slido poll. And so for our Slido poll today, the question that you are going to ask is, how do you envision using branding within your professional or personal worlds? But I'll go ahead and put up that QR code one more time. Thanks, Stephanie, for putting that link in there. But the code's in there, and we'll give people a couple minutes just to think, how do you want to apply this within your personal professional setting? And does anybody else need the QR code before I close it down? Everyone good? Okay. I'm already running behind, guys. Sorry. So yeah, someone said sending a clear message to clients of who we are. Creating something unique. Yeah, definitely for the MA program. Definitely. Creating a logo for your department and creating marketing swag. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely connected to marketing. Absolutely. So branding is definitely, I think, consistent through whatever you're trying to communicate within your organization or yourself. Oh, that's cool. Making a home bakery. That's awesome. That's very cool. So yeah, sometimes you're just not sure. And so I think That's also a great way to, tonight's a great way to brainstorm maybe how you want to use it or apply it. But I think too, also just learning it when you're ready, how you can apply that. Great. Thanks for sharing, guys. That was awesome. All right. Yeah. Oh, you're muted. Kim, you're muted.
Before we get into the details of creating a logo and using Adobe, we just wanted to go over two big differences of graphics that you're going to see later on with Adobe. And so we're using, there's two different graphics that are commonly used when creating logos or videos and things like that, photo editing. And so the first topic is vector graphics. And so vector graphics are going to be made up of computer-made points, and they're created by shapes and mathematical equations on computers. And the cool thing about vectors is that when you resize these images, if you zoom in or out or change the size of the actual image, you won't lose resolution. So you can see on your screens on that left side the vector example, and you can see how clear that image is even zoomed in. And then the opposite of that is going to be called a raster graphic. And so this is going to be more pixelated, and this is made up of individual pixels that are then arranged either in rows or in columns. And with raster graphics, when you zoom in or you change resolution, using raster graphics, you can see that as you zoom in, you get more pixelated and you can more clearly see each individual pixel. And so if you look at the images side by side, you can see the big differences between the two. And so we wanted to ask you in a poll if you think a vector or a raster graphic would be better to use when designing your logo.
So the poll should be in Zoom. Oh, perfect. Yeah, so everybody said pretty much that vector would be the best choice. So yeah, good job, guys.
Awesome.
All right. And then, sorry, make sure.
Yeah, so in creating graphics, we want to stick to trying to use the vector graphics just so that when you change your resolution, you don't lose, or when you change the size, you don't lose that resolution. And then what I'm going to go over are going to be some of the essential tools for Adobe Suite and Adobe Creative Cloud. There's a ton of tools that make up the whole Adobe Suite. And so we just wanted to highlight like what we think are the top 4 for creating a logo in Adobe. And so the first tool is called Adobe Illustrator. And this is typically used for creating graphics. And it's commonly used during with companies and developing different types of graphics. And so this is the one that we are going to be focusing on tonight in our webinar is using Adobe Illustrator and showing you how to create a graphic from using this tool. And then another big tool that's found in Adobe is going to be Adobe Photoshop, which is pretty common. Most people have heard of Adobe Photoshop. And this is the tool that is most commonly used to edit raster graphics or to edit photos in the Adobe Suite. And then we also have After Effects. And this is going to be a tool that we suggest that if later on your own time you want to get into learning how to animate your logo, just like you saw in our first slide when you came into the Zoom, you can see how to animate graphics. We have some other resources on our handouts to reference that you can use to see how After Effects works, but this is going to be a tool that will really help you animate your logos. And then the last tool is Adobe Stock. And Adobe Stock is used for when you're trying to download different types of media, so images, video, audio files, and then Adobe Stock allows you to edit those different types of media as needed. So you could add them into an animation or something like that. But again, we're going to focus on Illustrator for tonight. So the Adobe Creative Cloud, it's a really great tool, and it's pretty, once you start working with it, it's pretty simple to learn and figure out all the different tools. Adobe is something that is used commonly throughout different companies. And so lots of companies want people to be versed in knowing Adobe suites and how to work the basic tools of it. It's got really great features that make creating logos or photoshopping photos easy. And then they've also got a great customer support system in place and a process. So if you need help with creating logos or using any of the Adobe tools, if you go onto their website, it's really easy to find support for any of the issues you might be encountering. And then they have really great video tutorials on their website. And then there's also a ton on YouTube that you can reference that will show you step-by-step guides to create your logo or to edit your photo. And we have a lot of those resources also linked in our handout so that you can look at those later on. If you're trying this on your own later, there's tutorials there. The one big downside to Adobe is that it does require a paid subscription. And if you're at CU, then you can access Adobe through CU, but otherwise you'd have to pay for it. And then for creating things on Adobe, depending on the type of computer you have, Adobe doesn't work as well, or you might have to download some other programs in order to run Adobe smoothly. And then it does take a little bit of time to learn how to use all of the tools. But again, they have a lot of good videos and tutorials that you can look at. And then later on in the webinar, I'm going to be going over some alternatives to Adobe in case you can't access Adobe or don't want to pay for a subscription, things like that.
So at this point, are there any questions that you guys have or any wonderings before we move forward?
I guess I have a question about the computers and what might be like which ones it works better on. So like, is it better on PCs versus Macs, for example, or is it more about the operating system, like whether it's just a new enough system on either of those?
I would definitely say it has to be newer. I mean, when you download it, it is a pretty big file that uploads. So you definitely want to have a computer that can take all the storage that has with it. I would definitely say, I think if you can get it downloaded, it should be just fine. If you can get it updated. Stephanie and Kim, what do you guys think?
Yeah, so when I looked at Adobe products, there are different RAM, which is the computer memory requirements. So for example, After Effects requires a lot more RAM because it's an animation program, whereas Illustrator requires a lot less. So Adobe has a great reference in terms of what requirements you need to run the program, but it should be pretty comparable from a PC to a Mac. At least I've used both. So yeah. But good question, Nora. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Stephanie is going to lead us in making a design in Adobe Illustrator. I know that not everybody has it, but we thought it would be beneficial for everyone to see the process on Adobe. So take it away. Oh, you're muted, Stephanie.
Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so welcome to Adobe Illustrator. For those of you that want to participate and just kind of play around with the tool a little bit as I'm going through the demo, you can do that by creating a new document. So if you go up to File at the very top and go to New, you should get this screen here. And for those of you that would like to do this, can you guys pull that up? Can you just give me a thumbs up for those of you that have it, that would like it? Okay, perfect. All right, so the big thing here is that we'll start by just creating a name. So we're gonna go under preset details. You can put whatever you like. I'm just gonna put Stephanie logo design. But you can put whatever you like. And then a big thing below it is we wanna make sure our document is in points. So if you have something else like pixels or inches, go ahead and select that and make sure points is selected. And then for our dimensions, go ahead and make the width and the height both 500 points here. And then the last thing is we're going to make sure our color mode is an RGB color. So if that is not selected for you, go ahead and select that and change it to RGB color. So again, we've got our name at the top, we've got points selected, 500 by 500, and RGB color. How's everyone feeling? Does that look okay for everybody? Okay. Great, so whenever you're ready, you're gonna hit create. And it should come up with this nice whiteboard for you. And that's kind of our working space. All right, so I'm gonna get out of mine and I'm actually gonna go back to my working space. And just since we were talking about raster versus vector images, I pulled up this raster image from Adobe stock. And if I zoom in really far, you can see it loses its quality and it gets really pixelated. So as you can see, if I really blew up this picture, it would be very hard to see and it might lose its quality. But if we go over to our logo, which is a vector graphic, and let's say I zoom in on this line here, if I zoom in, it doesn't matter how far I go, it doesn't lose its quality. So that's why it's a really great option for logo design, because we can put it anywhere. We could have it on a postcard or we could have it on a billboard and it would look just as good. So, but before we kind of go into our logo design, I just want to give you just an orientation to Illustrator. So on the left-hand side, we have our toolbar, which is all the tools that we would use. And then in the middle is our workspace. And then to the right, we have our properties, layers, and libraries. And we're not going to worry about layers or libraries. We're just going to focus on properties for today. So does anyone have any questions about any of that to start? No? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go into our demo. And what I'm going to do basically is just take our logo design and pick it apart a little bit. So feel free and follow along if you have Adobe Illustrator, but just know that I am going to go somewhat quickly just so we can get a nice overview of or a number of different tools that are available to you. And let me just, yeah. So if you do have any kind of big questions or you're having trouble with a tool, just know that we have set some time aside later where you can play around with this a bit yourself and I'll be available to answer questions. So feel free and hold off on then. Also, if you want to kind of reference the handout, that starts on page 4. But just know that the handout, there's a lot more detail there, which I'm not going to go into. That's more so you have it as a reference in case you wanted to do this activity later after the webinar. So just to kind of some general housekeeping items there. So the first thing that we're going to do, I'm just going to move you guys down on my screen a bit, is we're going to create our background shape. And in order to do that, we're going to start with just a plain rectangle. So I'm going to go over to my toolbar here. And if I go to the 5th tool down and I right click on it, it gives me a bunch of shapes that I can choose from. And you can see the top one here is a rectangle tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And for all of these shapes, you can either make a shape by clicking and dragging to create the shape, or you can just click on the artboard and it will allow you to put the dimensions that you want for it. So I know, given my cheat sheet up here, that I want my background rectangle to be 315 by 355. And I'm going to select OK. And you can see it makes a rectangle down here for me, but it's not in the right place. So I'm going to go up to my selection tool, which is the top tool on my toolbar. I'm going to select that, and that will allow me to manipulate the entire shape as a whole. So I can move it around. I can change the height a little bit. I can go from the corner and change it there. I can rotate it. If I hover outside of the corner, it changes to kind of a curved two-sided arrow, and it allows me to rotate it one way or another. So it's a really great tool for just manipulating the entire shape together and selecting it. And if I decide I didn't like what I just did, I can go up to Edit and Undo as far as I would like, or you can use Control-Z and it'll go back to where it was. So I'm going to move it back to, all right, to right there. So that's my rectangle shape. And if you're doing it in Adobe Illustrator, if yours looks a little bit different, that's okay. We're going to adjust that in a little bit. But I just want to stop really quickly and see if there are any kind of just big burning questions that you guys have. Is everyone okay? Okay. Awesome. So we've got our rectangle, but we need to change the shape because you can see we've got curved edges here. So a great tool for that is the tool right below our selection tool, which is our direct selection tool. And that allows us to change individual elements of a shape. So I'm going to want to change the corners by selecting both the left and the right top corners, so I can move them together. So to do that, I'm going to click on the top left corner. I'm going to hold Shift and click on the top right corner. And then you can see these inner circles appear for me. And what that does is if I move one of those in towards the center of the rectangle, it creates a curvature to that corner. And I can just pull it down until just generally how I would like it. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. So I'm going to do the bottom left corner, hold Shift, and then do the bottom right corner and pull one of those in, and it's going to pull both together until it creates this nice U shape. So that's a really cool tool for manipulating rectangles. There's a lot that you can do with that. And then our shape our background shape has the right shape, but it doesn't have the right color or the right border. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to my selection tool because that allows me to select the entire shape. And then I'm going to go over to my properties panel. And this is a great panel because it allows you to change everything about that shape that you've selected. And if I go down to appearance, there are a couple options here. So I've got fill, which allows me to change the inside color of the shape here. And then stroke, which allows me to change the border. So let's start with fill. So I'm going to select that. On the swatches menu to the left, you can choose any color you like here, but we know what color we want, and we've got the hex value here. So we're going to go over to color mixer, and I'm going to enter that in this space here. So it's 1A4C78. And now it's this nice blue color. And then I'm going to change the stroke, or at least check on it. And I've got black selected, which is what I want, but you can choose whatever color you like. And then next to stroke, we can change the thickness. So I know that our logo has a thickness of 4. So I'm just going to use the up arrow until I get to 4. So that's about it for that background shape. Does anyone have any questions about that? Everyone good to go? Okay, fantastic. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on our triangles or our mountains here, which are just 2 triangles. And we're going to go back to our toolbar here. And if we click on that same tool that we used for the rectangle, if we right click on that, we have the option, there's no triangle tool, but we know that a triangle is a polygon. So we're going to select the polygon tool. And if I select or click on the artboard, it gives me the option to enter dimensions. Go ahead, if you're working on this activity with me, go ahead and enter the radius as 100 points. And then because there are 3 sides to a triangle, we're going to put the sides as 3 and just hit OK. And what Adobe Illustrator does is when you create a new shape, it's going to take all the properties of the last shape that you worked on. So that's why our triangle here is blue, the same as our background color. And if I go back to my selection tool and try to move my, so I just want to use this as a reference. You can see it's not quite the right size. So in order for me to adjust that, I'm going to go over to my properties panel, and you can see under transform, there's a W and H, which stands for width and height. And so I'm just going to enter the dimensions that I know that this triangle is, which is 204 and 196. And you can see now it's the right size. So, and I'm just going to change the fill of that as well to the right color. So if I go to fill, and then if I look at my colors here, the hex code is 009245. And then I know my stroke is going to be 3, so I'm just going to go ahead and enter that in there. And now it looks the same as this guy. And just for the sake of time, I made another triangle here for our smaller triangle. And I'm just going to quickly arrange it. But you would use the same process for making the small triangle. So I'm just going to put that in the right place there, just generally. And then you can see in this logo, the big triangle is in front of the small triangle, but it's not in the one that we're working with. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. And you can do that quickly by selecting the small triangle, right-clicking on it, and then going down to arrange. And then you can send backward. And what that's going to do is place it behind that front triangle. So those are our mountains. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on? Okay, sounds good. All right, so the last thing that the next thing is our moon here. And that's just going to be 2 circles. So if we go back to our shapes and we right click, we've got an ellipse tool here that we can select. And I'm just going to click on the artboard. And it's actually already got the right dimensions because I was working on it earlier. But the dimensions are 56. So if you want to enter those, if you're working in Illustrator, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to go back to my selection tool up to the top here. I'm going to move it kind of in the general place that I'd like it. And I'm going to change the fill over here to white. And I'm going to turn the stroke off. So this over here, the white box with the red line going through it, that's going to turn off the stroke. So there we go. So we've got a full moon, but we need to make a crescent moon. So in order to do that, we would make another circle. And just for the sake of time, I already made one for us. And I'm gonna just bring it to the front to make sure it's in the right place. But you would just make a circle that's a little bit smaller, 42 in diameter, and the same color as our background. And what that does is it kind of obscures this bigger circle into making this crescent moon shape. So it's a fun way to create different shapes with the same type of shape. So it's fun. You can be kind of creative about it. And then I'm not going to go into the star. That one's in your handout. And if you have questions about it when we kind of break apart and you guys can work on Illustrator independently, if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer it. But just for time, it's a little bit complicated and you can look at it in the handout. And then the last piece here is our text. So if we go to our 7th tool down here, it looks like a T, which is our type tool. If I select that and enter, and if I just start typing, it'll type in for me. So, but you can tell it's really small. And so what I'm going to do is go back to our selection tool, because that will help me adjust the whole text together. And then if I go over to my properties panel and I go down to character, the first option here is the font. So I can click that and pick whatever font I would like. We used the one of the Arial fonts, but I'm just gonna mix it up and do Century Gothic. And then if I go down here, we've got the points, which is the size of the font. So if you know the points that you want, you can just enter it. So let's say 24. And that, or you can adjust it using the arrows. And then I'm just gonna move it into place. And then if I wanna change the color, I'm just gonna go to fill and go to white to change it to there. So minus the star, that's it for our logo. So the next thing we're gonna go back to our slideshow. And go ahead and go, yeah, perfect. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to break apart into breakout rooms. And for those of you that have Adobe Illustrator and want to play around with some of the tools that I just demoed, you can join me in that breakout room, which is called Adobe Illustrator. And if you don't have Adobe Illustrator or you'd like to check out some non-subscription free alternatives to Adobe, you can join Kim in her breakout room, which is called Alternatives to Adobe. And in order to do that, go ahead and go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen to More. And then there's the option for breakout rooms. And then you should be able to pick whichever room that you want to join. So go ahead and do that whenever you can. And so I'll be in Adobe Illustrator, Kim will be in the alternatives, and then Kirsten will be in the main room if you have any questions.
Hi, welcome back. Did you guys have lots of fun? Good. All right. So welcome back. I hope you guys had valuable use of your time in your breakout rooms. Right now we're gonna head over to a Padlet. You can join using the QR code, or we will put that link in the chat box too, for you guys. You have a couple options for this because we all oh, can you guys hear me? I got a really weird message that I was muted. Sorry. I don't know what that was about. Anyways, we have a couple options for you based on what you chose. So if you made a logo, what you'll do is you'll click on the green plus button, you'll click on upload. I have my mountain image here. I can put I can put a description for it. So like here is the logo we created for our organization. The mountains are are a great way to show our love of the outdoors. And then you click publish. And then if you want to, what's really cool about Padlet is you are able to comment on the Padlet by just clicking down below, very similar to like any social media post. So I'll give you guys just like a couple minutes to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. The second option is that if you did not do the Padlet option, what you can do is you can just describe one or two things that you learned about or what you envision, how you envision using Adobe Illustrator in the future. So we'll just do a quick wrap up for that. If you don't have a chance to add anything right now, this will be a live document, so you can always return and post as you feel. But I'll give you guys about 1 minute to do that. And I see people typing, no rush, take your time. I'm just gonna reload and make sure it's coming up on my end. There you go. Okay, thumbs up if you, oh, there's someone. Okay, so someone said, I've never actually been clear on the difference between vector versus raster. So that explained a lot about my blurry image frustration I had over the years. So definitely I've had the same wondering. I didn't know anything about it before I kind of dove into this. So it is interesting to think about like how I will eventually publish material from now on. Yeah, seeing the different features. There's so many different features on there. Yeah, so hopefully, hopefully learn about the features helps inspire you to build your own brand in the future. One thing that we were going to highlight too as well is the Adobe After Effects. So if you notice in the beginning, we had a like little animation that we had that came up, and it was our brand that kind of flew in. So once you get the hang of designing your own logo, you can also maybe animate your own logo. This would be great to add onto social media or even just your own website or organization website. It just really adds a lot more. If you are interested in it, there is a tutorial in the handouts on page 10. So if you go to page 10 down here, there's more information on After Effects here if you're interested in it. And then always, if you do it, feel free to share on the Padlet that we just created. Because I said like this will be a live document for you guys to return to if you want to have inspiration or like, hey, I learned something really cool. That would also be great. And I just saw another posting. So it said, I love the different tools. Yeah, I can use this for future logos. So absolutely. And then are there any final questions that we have before we wrap up for the night? We have our feedback form too, but before we wrap up. Okay. All right.
All right, so we just wanted to point out on our slideshow at the end, we have 2 references slides so that you can click on these links. They're all live links in case you want to get more information about anything that we talked about tonight and all the different programs that you've seen. So those are there for you to access in case you're interested in learning more. They're also going to be links in the handout as well. All right, and we just wanted to say thank you so much for attending our webinar. We really had a great time preparing the webinar for you all and showing you how to create your own logo. And we hope that this information is helpful for you in the future in creating a logo for a personal branding thing that you have going on, or maybe for your capstone project for the program, something like that, or something you need to create for at your job. And so we do encourage you to use our handout and references on there to investigate different tools. And then we were hoping that you could please fill out our feedback form. We'll put a link to it in the chat. And then if you want to do it on your phone or your iPad, you can also go ahead and scan that QR code. And then it'll take you to this Google form where we just have a couple of multi-choice questions and then 2 open-ended questions for your responses, just so that we can see how we can improve the webinar for future use and understand what was helpful, what was not so helpful for you during our time. So thank you so much for coming to our webinar. And then if you have more questions or need help, our contact information's on the bottom slide as well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.